Our koalas will be extinct in the wild in a few years' time if we don't do something to save them.
As time went by, I noticed that some of the children were returning, and I wondered what we could have done differently to prevent this intergenerational homelessness.
I am motivated by all the young autistic people sitting at home, wanting to work but not quite sure how they will be accepted.
They think that they can see themselves doing university because of the influence that I've had on them.
In 2020, we started a not-for-profit social enterprise called Australian Spatial Analytics, or ASA. Our mission is to increase workforce participation for young neurodivergent people and foster a generation of data professionals. We started because of the appalling unemployment rate of autistic people in Australia. 34% of young autistic people are unemployed, and more than half of them have never had a paid job. But it shouldn't be that way, because the young neurodivergent mind often has fantastic strengths in this technologically advanced world. We also had an economic problem that we wanted to solve, and that was the fact that a lot of data processing from Australian organisations is offshored. The industries we serve offshore their data processing at a rate of more than $1 billion a year. We bring that work onshore and train young neurodivergent people on the job as data analysts and contribute to the local Australian economy. We started in Brisbane with one employee. We've now employed more than 220 people at our social enterprise, 80% of which are young neurodivergent people, mainly autistic Australians. And as we grow, we show other organisations the potential of neurodivergent people and how they can integrate into any workplace if given the opportunity. Every individual that works with us has their own unique story. I remember when one of our young team came along with me to a cafe. He always walked behind me because he doesn't like to walk parallel when he has a conversation. We went up to the counter and he ordered a cappuccino. But when we got back, he came up to me and said, "I've never had the confidence to order a coffee at a cafe before. You have no idea how much this means to me." I am motivated by all the young autistic people sitting at home, wanting to work but not quite sure how they will be accepted. There is so much untapped potential from our unemployed community. We found that young autistic people are unbelievable not only for productivity but also for workplace culture, and that they're the best colleagues to have around.
I've worked as a social worker until I was 81 years old. I worked with a lot of people who were experiencing domestic violence, and we worked through those issues. And then I also worked with people in homelessness, and I became a manager of a homeless program for families with children. And as time went by, I noticed that some of the children were returning, and I wondered what we could have done differently to prevent this intergenerational homelessness. I decided that I wanted to do my master's to achieve better outcome with the things that I was doing. And so I worked on that, and I decided I'd do my PhD when I was in my 80s. For my PhD, I worked on homeless families as voices, telling me how they felt about their homeless experiences, because there's not much written about that. And I want to hear how they felt about the parenting they received, the education, the schooling they had, and their employment, and later their relationships and the housing they now currently have. So that's the area I worked on, looking at what the children felt about their homeless experiences. I would like to see a wraparound service with children and their whole families, because they all need support when they're homeless. This would involve supporting parents with their parenting role, helping them to discipline safely, and will look after the children, support them to go to school and to get a better education. I loved working with people and I loved helping them to become stable in their housing. My aim in life is to help people make a positive change in their lives, that they could experience happiness and enjoy living.
I was working with natural zeolite, which is a very abundant rock, and during my research, I discovered a way to turn it into zeolite LTA, which is actually the main ingredient in laundry detergent. I thought of this idea for a business that I could make a reusable laundry system, the first of its kind in Australia, that could also help other people. In Australia, there's something called rheumatic heart disease, and it is a disease of poverty that affects predominantly Indigenous people in remote communities. One of the driving factors of rheumatic heart disease is it's caused by a bacteria, strep. Strep is highly contagious, and one of the ways you can prevent strep is by having access to laundry facilities. I really want to help the community to provide laundry facilities to stop rheumatic heart disease from happening. One of the other things that I'm very passionate about is engagement with young people from marginalised groups, such as Indigenous people and people from low socioeconomic backgrounds. I grew up on the Gold Coast, on the South End, near Burleigh Beach. We actually never had any scientists come and visit our school. We only had the Army or the Defence Force come and recruit. And so I wanted to give young people an opportunity to meet a real scientist. And I quickly realised that what I was doing was very impactful. I had students, coming up to me and telling me that, I was the first Indigenous scientist that ever met, and that they think that they can see themselves doing university because of the influence that I've had on them. Since then, I have used my own funds to fund the outreach or the engagement I do in these remote communities. My ultimate goal would be to have a research lab full of deadly young Indigenous students working on topics that matter to them. It's really, really special to be able to bring my passion for science and chemistry in with my connection to country.
I've always been a huge advocate and a bit fierce about protecting our wildlife and our environment and our precious green spaces. Wildlife Rescue Sunshine Coast was set up in 2013 by myself and 3 other people. We rehabilitate injured, orphaned and sick wildlife, and we are all volunteers. There's a whole team of us that are dedicated to making sure that our community has somewhere they can contact when they find wildlife in crisis. In 2019, we had the huge, awful, devastating fires across the country, and that was a big time for Wildlife Rescue Sunshine Coast because we used our time not only in the field rescuing wildlife, but to raise money to help small organisations like ourselves across the country. And we raised little short of $700,000, which we gave away to 50 small organisations just like ourselves, but who were going through the most crippling and devastating times. My greatest highlight so far has been when I built the first kangaroo hospital in Queensland. And that kangaroo hospital now treats many kangaroos and wallabies in our region and helps them rehabilitate and get back out into the wild. We are so lucky here in Australia to have the most diverse and iconic creatures that don't exist anywhere else in the world. But then, of course, the bubble pops a little bit when you realise that the picture isn't as beautiful as you thought it was, because there are so many animals and birds get injured, lose their homes. Our koalas will be extinct in the wild in a few years' time if we don't do something to save them. And to do that, we need to put habitat loss on the Australian agenda. We can all contribute. Everybody can do it. From planting a native tree in your garden to rescuing something from the side of the road that needs your help. Everybody can be part of this journey.